Hello and welcome to Tom's Tech Show. Today we are scripting our AWS backups. Welcome to Tom's Tech Show. Today I'm going to go over how I script the backup of my AWS instances. You can purchase programs, do a lot of different things to back up these instances. I mean, there's several different applications that will do it for you, but AWS already has a way to create a snapshot, if you will, of your instance. It's similar to a VMware snapshot, but not quite exactly. It actually makes a full copy of your instance and the state that it's in. So doing it this way, the only cost you incur is the storage of the snapshot file. So that's going to be less than purchasing some application that's going to back up your instances. Typically what I get at the end of every day is an email that has the name of the instance, the date stamped when the snapshot was taken, the AMI, which is the image of the snapshot, and the snapshot file IDs, all in an email. And it tells me down here at the bottom how many it's cleaned up, because I only keep so many. It's rolling going forward. So I have some tables in a database that keep the information. So I need a system table. This is the instances that I want to back up. So I have the name, the AWS region, because you can't do anything without an AWS without setting a region, right? So the instance ID and a flag whether to back it up or not. Then I need a table for backups. So the name of the backup, the instance ID of the backup, date stamp, region, the AMI created, and snapshot ID. So that way it can manage it through a database. You need to store this information somewhere, and I find it pretty easy to store it in a database locally. I have other videos about how to connect to MySQL from PowerShell, and I'll link those at the end. Okay, so let's get into this script that runs. The first off, the top part here is connecting to my database. So I have my tables, and I use tools to connect to MySQL from PowerShell. I import the AWS module, which allows me to run commands against AWS. Then I have the email set up, the basic part, start of the email. A style sheet that lets the email come over to me in a very readable format. The SMTP server, who the email is from, who's it going to, the password, if my email server requires authentication. If it's local, you may not need that. Who it's going to, and my email subject. Okay, I do a few things right out of the gate. Like I get the last, what's the ID of the last backup? This is going to help me later to calculate how many things were backed up, so I can know that it was successful by counting records in the system. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, just asking my database what systems are set to back up yes. Okay. So once I do that, I can start a loop. I've got my list of systems that need to be backed up, so then we're going to start looping. Okay, so I say, let's start processing. I give it the system time. I get my environment variables for what AWS environment I'm connecting to. That gets my AWS settings key, my secret key, and I can plug those in here and store them as the default for this session that's going to run through. Okay, now here we get down to where we're starting to get kind of the nitty-gritty of creating the backup or snapshot instances of my AWS resource. So we need the date today. I add that to the name of the system. So I have the email that comes over will say system name and date, and I can go to AWS and look at the snapshots that have been taken. It'll have my system name and the date. So then I need to process that. I need to say, go create an image, a snapshot basically, of the image that I want. So I just say new EC2 image, give it my instance ID, the name, and no reboot. I don't want these systems are live, customers are using them, so I don't want to reboot the box. Now, I could kind of continue from here and just go on and go to the next one, but I find it's a little easier and more stable if I go through and loop and check what the status is to make sure that it's complete before moving on to the next one. Especially when I'm writing these system variables and the data that I get back, I'm writing those variables back to my database. So I basically get the EC2 image based on my image that I'm creating. I'm getting that. What is it? And I'm going to check for if it's available. So every 5 seconds, I'm going to check if it's available. If it is, then I'm going to jump out. So that gives me, usually from my experience so far, it takes like 10 to 15 seconds before it becomes available, so that 3 loops through here, and boom, my image is available. Then I can come and do get EC2 snapshot based on the snapshot ID, and that will get me the ID for my snapshot that I'm going to write back into my database. So then I create this SQL statement which places all that information into my MySQL database. So I'm basically going through creating my EC2 image, which has a snapshot associated with it, and then I get that data and I post that back to my database. Then I sleep for a minute and I go back to the top and I do the next one in my list. So that creates it all, that gets it in there, and now I've got image backups of everything. Now I want to go, and after 3 days of this being there, I want to be able to clean it up. So I set my cleanup count. I'm counting here in the cleanup, set that to 0, get my date, how far back I want to go. So I'm going back 3 days. So I do my date calculations there. So I go to get my backups that are more than 3 days old. So that's this SQL here, and I get my clean data, which is a list of all the instances, AMIs, that I want to clean up. So then I'm going to run through them. For each one of these in my list, I'm going to go through this. So I again set my region, which I've gotten from my database. I'm going to unregister my AMI. So every snapshot is going to have an associated AMI with it, and I have to remove that first. And then I remove the snapshot, increment my cleanup count, and update my backups and delete that record now that the snapshot has been removed. So I loop through that and clean up my backups and add that text to the end of my backup strings. So now I go and I use my last backup and I find out what my backup list is. So I go from the last backup forward and do a query of what's been backed up. So I know what my last backup was, which was before all this started. Way up here on the top, I had this get my last backup up here. So down here in the bottom, it's gone through all the backups. Now I need to get that list. So I get that list and I take that and I build that into the message that I'm going to send out. So we create the subject. I'm telling the body is HTML. So my backup list data, and I post it, convert my backup list data to HTML with my style and output that. Now I create an SMTP server connection. This happens to be SSL, so I set that to true. Push my credentials that I had above, and I send out the message. So then when that comes into my email, I have this list of servers that have their name, their date stamp, the AMI, and the snapshot. And showing me down here at the bottom, I've cleaned 13 backups. So I know that when I set these things up, that I know how many systems I'm backing up. It should be the same that's in the list that I clean every day until I add a new one. Then it will slowly increment up higher. Okay, so all of this code is going to be put up on my BitBucket, and you can edit it and look at it and move it around and change it to your needs. But that's kind of how I do my backups. There is another option of just going and getting the list of backups directly from Amazon. Just go through the EC2 instances and create backups of everything, and then later when you clean up, just go through the AMIs and find which ones are old. But I wanted to be able to turn on and off backups as needed, so I opted for using a database and running through those database records like I have done here. Okay, so if you have any questions, please post them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe to my channel if you like more of this. I also do, movie reviews and other things here and there, so you can check the different playlists. I'm Tom with Tom's Tech Show. Thanks for watching, and as always, God bless.